culture.
The strangest superheroes of all have been around for about 50 years at this point, but there are many mutant members of the X-Men whose histories stretch back way further than that. For some, the mutant gene manifests itself in being able to fly or shoot laser beams from their eyes or have their skin turn invisible so you can see all their insides, which is disgusting. For others, their principal superhuman ability seems to be being old. Old as balls. With that in mind, I'm Ben from What Culture, and here are the 10 oldest mutants in X-Men history. Number 10. Professor X. Estimated age, 60 to 70. We don't have an exact figure to put on it, but we're pretty sure Charles Francis Xavier has been around the block a few times. Marvel has this slightly confusing sliding timeline, which means that characters that were introduced as teens or 20-year-olds in the 60s aren't eligible for a bus pass now. The Professor X we see in modern-day comics looks to be in his 40s or 50s, which, considering he looked about the same when the first issue of X-Men debuted in 1963, would make him about 100 years old now. Which isn't quite right. After all, he needed time to get a bachelor's degree in biology, study for a master's at Cambridge, and hang out with one Mr. Magneto, who was a kid during the Second World War, making both he and Charles at least 60 or 70 years old. Number 9. Magneto. Estimated age, 70 to 80. So, that Eric Magnus Lenshair guy. Or Max Eisenhardt, or whatever his actual name is. A young Jewish boy at the outbreak of World War II, Max was sent to the Nazi concentration camps where his parents were killed and his latent mutant abilities manifested themselves. After escaping Auschwitz, he faced persecution elsewhere across Europe before finally decamping to Israel, where he helped Charles Xavier to stop Baron von Strucker from resurrecting Hydra. So we put Magneto somewhere in his 70s. Number 8. Wipeout. Estimated age, 80 plus. Wipeout is a pretty minor character in the X mythos, and if you look up any bio or mention of him during his scant appearances, he's principally characterized by being elderly. Before it became a safe haven for mutant kind in the later years, Wipeout would sit around in Genosha's jail, waiting for his teammate Pipeline to bring him new prisoners whose powers he could get rid of, and then chuck them in a cell. Still, before he bit the dust in a weird arc that aimed to frame Havoc, he was one of the few confirmed elderly mutants. So that's why he's here. Number 7. Namor. Estimated age, 100 plus. The King of Atlantis was born the son of a human sailor and an Atlantean noble. He still looks like a normal person, but has some goofy little wings on his feet and superpowers that are several times that of most Atlanteans. Marvel have repeatedly identified him as their first mutant, and whilst he's not as old as some of the others on this list, his birth in the 20s puts him as pretty damned elderly. Number 6. Graymalkin. Estimated age, 260. Jonas Graymalkin, who took his surname for his codename because of course you would, Graymalkin is a cool-ass name, is a more recent addition to the X-Men universe, but his origins are actually rooted all the way back in the 18th century. Gaining his power from being in the darkness, the longer he spends in the shadows, the greater his strength, his enhanced agility, and seeming invulnerability. Having been buried for nearly 200 years after his father nearly beat him to death upon discovering he was gay, Jonas was shaken out of his 200-year snooze during an attack on the Xavier Institute, where he was conveniently buried, and joined up with the young X-Men. Number 5. Mystique and Destiny. Estimated age, 250 plus. When you delve into the history of Raven Darkholm, you also have to take a long, hard look at her decades-long relationship with Irene Adler, better known as Destiny. As it goes, Adler the X-Men character is actually the same as the Arthur Conan Doyle creation, which means she's at least been around since the late 1800s. Destiny and Mystique, who've had a long-standing gay relationship, have been around even longer than that. Again, there's no exact figure on it, but the official word from Marvel is that Raven and Irene have been active since the dawn of the 20th century, which means they're at least 100 years old, but probably way more. Number 4. Wolverine. Estimated age, 250 plus. At this point, Logan's history has become a bit of a running joke. His history is so balked that Marvel have so far published not one, but 2 origin miniseries trying to clear up the backstory of their most popular X-Man. As seen in the opening montage to X-Men Origins Wolverine, he's fought in basically every major war since the 1800s. He then went on to hook up with the Canadian government's shady Weapon X program and got all of those weird adamantium skeleton experiments done on him. After all the stuff that's happened in Wolverine's long life, you have to think maybe he's looking forward to a bit of a dirt nap. Number 3. Exodus. Estimated age? 1000. Exodus is not only a real mutant, but he's also really old, having been born in 12th century France under the name Benet du Paris. Yeah, so Wolverine fought in a couple of poxy world wars, but Exodus? That guy was in the Crusades. When his powers manifested, he was found worthy of hanging out with the likes of Apocalypse, but unfortunately, he wasn't as submissive as the bad guy needed, and so he got sealed up in a crypt in the Swiss Alps, trapped in a coma-like state for literal centuries. Number 2. Apocalypse. Estimated age? 5000. With a name that literally means the first one, Apocalypse has been one of the main antagonists not only for the X-Men, but the whole of mutant kind since forever. Apocalypse's whole bag is that he wants to bring about the end of the world with the help of his 4 horsemen. Born 5,000 years ago in ancient Jordan, he was supposedly the first person on Earth to possess the mutant gene, causing his lips to turn blue, his skin grey, and his people to abandon him, which kind of makes you feel bad for him, really. That is, until you realize it's taken him over 5,000 years and the world hasn't ended yet. I suppose you could call him a shit end of the world bringer for wankers. Hashtag shit end of the world bringer for wankers. Number 1. Selene. Estimated age? 17,000. Apocalypse may have been around for 5,000 years, but Selene has apparently been active since at least 10,000 BC. Selene was born 17,000 years ago and began her life by controlling her entire tribe and forcing them to sacrifice their lives so that she could use her vampiric powers to feed and stay youthful. After a very long and varied life, she eventually got to New York and joined longtime X-Men villains / leather fetishists, the Hellfire Club, to get her revenge. And that's our list. Is there anyone more deserving of a bus pass? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can even follow me here on Twitter if you fancy. I'm Ben from What Culture, and thanks for watching.